We've had conversations over the last 2+ years. We've talked a lot about being stewards of place, about the importance of making sure that we are a public university, not just for our faculty, staff, students, and alumni, but for our entire community. And tonight is a wonderful example of that. Us being able to host this documentary that talks about the history of West Virginia and that brings to the forefront an important conversation.
We know that universities have been and must be the place for discovery, thought, debate, and conversation. So we are committed to making sure that's the case tonight and always. So as we go on tonight and we go through this panel and we meet afterwards, I want everybody to think about their place in West Virginia, whether you're from here or whether you've come here like I have. I think it's really important that we make sure that we aren't just coming in and taking little pieces, but instead that we're making sure we're growing and giving back. One of the things I'm really proud of is the fact that we educate a higher percentage of West Virginians than any other university in the state. And we know that because we're a regional public university, those students then stay here afterwards. Because the greatest gift that we have in West Virginia is our human capital. And we need to make sure that we continue to develop that, and that's what we're doing here at Fairmont State. And that, again, that doesn't just extend to the students we're educating here, but hopefully to all of you here tonight. So we're excited to welcome you. I'm thrilled to see such a packed house, and I hope to speak to many of you afterwards, but enjoy the movie. Thank you.
The topic of tonight's documentary, the 1968 Farmington No. 9 mine disaster, is particularly well aligned with the commitment that President Davis just described. The impact of the tragedy was felt far and wide. Many of us are familiar with the mine safety laws that were established here in the United States in the aftermath of the disaster. It also led to the creation of World Safety Day. So it's fitting that tonight we gather to premiere a documentary about a local disaster that was produced by a Brazilian team. Fellow West Virginians, it's my distinct honor to introduce documentarian 𝗪𝗓𝗄 Araújo, producer Fábio Marques, executive director Johnny Costa, screenwriter and director Bobby Cardoso. 𝗪𝗓𝗄, Fábio, Johnny, Bobby, thank you for honoring us with the premiere of your documentary. Unfortunately, the No. 9 disaster was not the first nor the last fatal mine accident in the Mountain State. Last week, Steve Lipscomb died at the Rolling Thunder mine in Nicholas County. Lipscomb, a foreman, perished while ensuring his crew of 17 miners escaped to safety. Tragically, he was the 5th mine fatality in West Virginia this year. Earlier in November, Joey Mitchell Jr. was killed in the Mountain View mine in Tucker County. In August, Eric Bartram died in the Marfork preparation plant in Raleigh County. In February, Billy Stalker perished in the Black Eagle mine in Raleigh County. In January, Stephen Fields died in the Twilight Surface mine in Boone County. Their deaths, 57 years after the Farmington No. 9 disaster, remind us of the gravity of the topic of tonight's documentary. So please join me in a moment of silence to honor these courageous miners as Mike Biggin Payton, Vice President of the United Mine Workers of America, District 31, and Director of International Region 1, lights a candle in their memory. Ladies and gentlemen, momentarily we'll begin the English language premiere of A Day to Remember. Upon the film's conclusion, Andresa will address the audience. Then she will moderate a panel discussion with 3 local experts. Next, we will have a question and answer session with the audience. You all can submit questions using the bottom portion of your program. It's perforated, so you can just tear it off. If you would like a particular panelist to answer, please indicate that on your question. Now, I ask that you please silence your electronic devices and enjoy the U.S. premiere of A Day to Remember, the history that inspired World Safety Day.
"56 years after an explosion that took the lives of 78 coal miners, more than 100 family members and locals gathered at the Farmington No. 9 Mine Memorial to remember those killed in the blast. In attendance at today's ceremony was West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, a Farmington native who also lost family during the tragedy, as well as a Brazilian documentary filmmaker who came all the way to West Virginia from Florida to experience the ceremony firsthand.
One thing for me was super important. We are here in this ceremony, so 56 years passed, and this accident never ends. When one worker don't return to home, this day stay open forever. We miss this person.
November 20th, 1968, 5:30 a.m. A fire broke out inside a mine in Farmington, West Virginia, United States of America. The shift at the Farmington mine was scheduled to change at 8 a.m. But around 5:30 a.m., the first power outage hit, followed by an explosion deep within the mine. The shift had started at midnight. At that moment, inspections had already been done to authorize operations. Farmington is a small town in the state of West Virginia, in the Appalachian region. Back then, it had a population of about 500 people. This area played a significant role in both American and global coal mining for several reasons. The Appalachians are known for their vast coal reserves, which have historically been a major energy source for the United States and the world. This region holds some of the largest coal deposits in America. Coal mining has a long history in Appalachia, going back centuries. This activity played a key role in economic development and in shaping the identity of local communities. Coal mining is a major economic activity throughout the area of Appalachia, creating jobs and providing income for all the surrounding communities. Many towns and villages in the region rely on mining as their main source of economic livelihood. What people may not realize is the serious safety challenges concerning the miners' activities. Sometimes I think turning on the air conditioning or taking a hot shower shouldn't come at such a cost. Coal mining after World War II, around 1968, was at its peak. In the recent decades, with the global shift toward cleaner, renewable energy sources, coal's importance in Appalachia has been declining. Still, the region continues to play a role in supplying coal for both domestic and international markets. Life in Farmington was peaceful. Mountains, fishing, and church. The miners used to say the greatest threat in the region was the mountain itself, if it ever turned against the men who dared enter it. The mine involved in the Farmington disaster was 𝗀𝗄𝗃 No. 9 mine. It was founded in 1902, so by the time that the accident occurred in 1968, the mine was 66 years old. And considering the lifespan of a mine like that, it could have lasted up to 100 years. It was located in the Farmington and Mannington areas, in the western part of West Virginia. The mine employed 320 workers and spanned thousands of square feet. It was essentially an underground mine, producing 2 million tons of coal per year. Records show that the mine had 6 main wings, laid out in a multi-compartment, complex system within the Pittsburgh coal seam, more than 300 feet below the surface. By the year of 1968, the mine had already seen 3 major accidents. In 1954, 1958, and 1965. At the Farmington mine, the workforce was a mix of highly experienced miners and newcomers. Their wages could range from $28 to as much as $33 per day. While some of them were just starting their careers in mining, many were men with decades of experience in coal mining. They were deeply familiar with coal mining safety practices and with the risks involved. Among them was the father of Joe Magna, Emilio Magna, who worked as a session boss.
My name is Joe Magna. My dad had 30 years in the coal mines, and he was 48 years old.
Emilio had come to America from Italy with his family when he was just 3 years old. Like many European immigrants, he began extracting coal from beneath the surface of West Virginia at a young age, just 14 years old. That night, Emilio went down into the mine in high spirits. He was truly happy. It was going to be his final day working underground. The 48-year-old Italian immigrant was celebrating with his family because that coming Saturday they would open their own gas station. From then on, his work would be above ground under the sun. His son, Joe, tried to persuade him, but he remained true to his word. He said he needed to finish his job the same way he had started it.
So he took me up to my buddy's house to stay all night, and I told him, I said, don't go to work and we'll go trout fishing. Well, he said, no, I owe them that much. So he told me, probably the first time in my life, that he said, be good, don't get in trouble, I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow.
That Wednesday, November 20th, 1968, a day forever scarred in the workplace safety history, Emilio and 98 other men went down into the mine for the night shift. The temperature was below freezing. Humidity and barometric pressure were low, and the wind just kept blowing.
Since it was November, a time of extreme cold in the region where the mine is located, changes in gas behavior is expected in this type of cold environment, especially methane and carbon monoxide, which are commonly present in these conditions. With the low temperatures combined with reduced atmospheric pressure, these gases become denser, slowing down their circulation. This is why it's absolutely necessary to have exhaust systems running to ensure safe working conditions inside the mine, preventing gases from building up, which could lead to a major explosion in the event of ignition.
My name is Sharon Clellan. Maiden name was Cartwright. And my daddy was David Cartwright, and he was killed in the No. 9 mine explosion. There were 5 of us. The oldest was 10, and the youngest was 11 months. The night that this happened, Daddy didn't even want to go to work that night. He was sick, wasn't feeling very well. And my mom kept counting, David, you don't want to go to work, don't go to work. And he said, but if I don't go to work, they'll put food on the table for my children. And so when Mom went to bed, we could hear her praying, keep your hand on David, keep him safe, bring him home to us again.
While the miners worked, their families slept. A mechanic was called in urgently to fix an electrical issue. There was a brief power outage, which quickly came back on. However, on the west side of the mine, no one was responding on the radio. The lights began to flicker, and the mine started to shake. Emilio and his fellow workers unfortunately had no idea what awaited them deep inside the mine in that very cold morning.
I think it was around, must have been 7 o'clock, something like that. Danny's mom hollered up and said, where does your dad work? And I said, Farmington No. 9. And she said, it blew up.
All evidence suggests that the first shaking around 5:30 a.m. was the beginning of a series of explosions that would follow that day in the Farmington underground mining complex. The Farmington blasts were especially intense due to a large buildup of flammable gases that had accumulated in the mine's tunnels.
Methane released during coal extraction is an inherent part of the process, as this gas is trapped in fissures and pores inside the rock. As the mining advances, methane is released, creating an explosive atmosphere inside the mine. When combined with coal dust, also naturally produced during coal extraction, they create tiny particles. This leads to an environment that requires even great caution from the professionals working inside it.
At the time of the explosion, the mine was releasing 8 million cubic feet of methane every 24 hours, more than double the rate in the first incident in 1954.
Residents have reported hearing the blast from miles and miles away, alerting locals and people in nearby towns to the massive tragedy that was unfolding inside the mine.
It was about 8 o'clock when us kids started getting up. We seen Mom, and she was sitting at the table drinking her coffee, but yet crying. And Kathy, the oldest one, asked her, Mom, what's wrong? And she said, I just received word from our pastor. It was our pastor's husband, in regards to an explosion at the mines in which Dad was in. And I was Daddy's girl. I'm the middle child. I was Daddy's girl. And I'm like, okay, but Daddy's coming home. He'll be home. And hours went by and still nothing. Seeing him on Sundays, he would go to a radio station and he would always sing on the radio station, and he took my oldest sister, and then finally I was 3 years old, and I kept saying, Daddy, please take me, please take me. He said, no, you'll never do it, no. And then finally this Sunday morning, Mom says, just take her. If she doesn't do it, don't take her no more. And that's where I begun singing at. Because my daddy took me to this radio station, and we did sing. And I don't know if you guys, if anyone is familiar with the song, He Touched Me. But my uncle has the last tape of me singing that song, He Touched Me. And what a joy it was to be able to sing with my daddy, and now not be able to.
Explosions in coal mines can generate shock waves that travel long distances and cause noticeable ground vibrations. The explosions at Mine 9 sent a smoke plume over 150 feet into the air from the mine entrance. One of those blasts was captured in an iconic photograph by a Charleston Gazette photographer, Lawrence Pierce. It's easy to imagine that in the city of Farmington, everyone had some kind of connection to Mine Number 9. A father, a brother, an uncle, a grandfather, a nephew. Everyone knew someone who worked there. And that was the story of Paul, one of the youngest miners working that night. He had married while still in high school to a girl who lived near the mine.
My name's Judy Snyder Henderson Kuhn. I grew up in this area, just across the hill from Farmington No. 9 mine that exploded in November 20, 1968. I can tell you that the No. 9 mine was the big employer of the area, so of course everybody went to work there. And although it was a big employer, it was not particularly safe.
When word of the accident spread, the miners' families rushed to the mine headquarters to get news about their loved ones.
It was a store. It was a company store. So everybody gathered there, and we stood outside, frigid cold. Old man was it cold. The state police was driving back and forth. People was gathering. We seen some of the rescue team coming on the slope on a man trip. We waited inside for somebody to tell us something, which nobody did, because they didn't know anything. One of the constables made a statement that the rats are probably eating the bodies. Yeah. So that didn't go well with me. So I did something about it. Anyhow, a couple of state troopers were friends of mine, and they put me in the car and told me, okay, get out, go home, be good. So I did. Went home and still waiting and waiting and waiting. It was, never heard hardly anything.
Many miners' children spend the day at school, anxious and without any updates about their fathers. One of them was 14-year-old 𝗳𝗵𝗿𝗃𝗃. He was told about the explosion by his mother and the school principal. James, despite deeply worried about his father, chose to stay at school that day. To his dad, education always came first, and James wanted to honor that.
My earliest memory of the explosion that morning was about 5:20. I was in a deep sleep, and all of a sudden I just felt my whole body shake. And I looked at the clock, and it was about 5:20. And I was finishing a dream in my mind where there were men in the mines, and one of them was yelling, "Fire in the hole, fire in the hole, fire in the hole." And next thing you know, there was this huge explosion, and everything just lit up, and then it went dark. And I don't know why that was on my mind, other than the fact that my dad had been injured in the mines a few weeks before that. And my mom and him were talking as I was going to sleep. And we lived in a small coal mining camp, so the houses were small. And even though I was in a different room, I could hear them talking. And she was telling him that he needed not to go to work this evening. And he said, well, we've got a son we've got to raise, and want to make sure he gets an education and does something with his life. And she continued to insist that he not go to work that evening. But he said, no, he said, I'll think about what you're saying. That morning, we got ready, went to school, went about my morning, went to class. And I believe it was either, I think it was the second period, I got called out of class by the assistant principal, or maybe it was the principal at the time. And when I went out in the hallway, I saw my mom, and she was there crying. And she told me, what had happened and stuff, and asked if I wanted to go to the mines and wait. And I didn't like to miss class because I would get behind. And she told me it was fine for me to stay there, and that she would get in touch with me if anything changed.
The rescue teams faced extreme difficulty accessing mine number 9. Inside the mine, there was structural instabilities due to fires and blasts, and toxic gases were still present. All of this made rescue efforts very dangerous.
How many workers?
I want to say there were seven sections that were working that evening.
And when you talk about the evening starts midnight?
Right.
Midnight?
Yeah.
Okay. And the explosion starts 5:30?
Right.
A total of 21 miners managed to escape Mine 9 alive that day. Most of them pulled up by a crane that lowered a bucket into one of the mine shafts.
So they brought the bucket in to drop down and lacked 20 feet of reaching them. They had to pull it back up, go to Fairmont Supply to get more cable and put on. Meanwhile, there's more explosions happening. Guys passed out. They finally got the cable in. I just couldn't imagine what them guys went through, and we was hoping that my dad was one that was coming out, but it didn't happen.
24 hours after the explosions, the tragedy was already making headlines in major national and international newspapers. In Farmington, that day, no children went to school. All 12 county schools were closed. The New York Times published a report detailing the mine's infamous history of safety violations. The president of the United Mine Workers of America, Tony Boyle, held a press conference and promised to fight for stronger safety regulations for mine workers.
There were many, many news reporters there, magazine people. Yeah, this was the first time I've ever known that to happen. I have all the newspapers with the pictures, everything. That's the biggest thing that I've ever known to happen.
Remember the press. Remember the press and how they would write stories and they would twist stories and not really tell the truth because it didn't sell papers, is what I was ultimately able to conclude. That was unbelievable.
The pastor's husband, that he came and the morning of the explosion, he came and told Mom about the explosion. And every couple days he would come and update my mom. She really never got no notification from the mines itself pertaining that our dad was never coming home. It came from the pastor's husband. Yeah, it was just like she was out in left field somewhere and no one cared. And it was sad seeing our mom cry herself at night and pray at night, knowing deep down inside, she knew deep down inside he was never coming home.
Methodist Church, on the morning of the second day, mothers and children gathered to pray. Meanwhile, the fire in the mine was out of control. The only way to manage the risk was to cut off the oxygen supply. So they decided to seal 2 of the mine shafts with 16-ton steel plates. At the mine site, people held vigil while Red Cross workers served them hot drinks. Meanwhile, at the company store downtown, they began issuing emergency paychecks to the families.
Ordeal, we were all told that we needed to gather at the small church that was down below the hill. And so we all gathered there. And I want to say, you probably had, 70-some wives. You probably had, if the number stands right in my head, it was maybe like 250 or 350 children, and everyone gathered in that small church. And it was something that you never, ever want to experience, to have that many people in one place at one time being told that the 78 men that were trapped in the mines were being left there for dead. It was horrendous. The yelling, the screaming, the wailing, just something that you just can't comprehend.
By the end of the second day, the mine was still burning. The ventilation shafts were shooting flames more than 100 feet into the air. By the evening, the company had confirmed the names of 78 missing miners. The early hours of day 3 began with a powerful explosion. A 1,000-gallon tank was blasted into the air. The breeze from the blast was found nearly a kilometer away.
We looked outside, and Mom said that she looked outside, and then, of course, we went to go look. And she said the sky was a reddish-orange color. And she said she knew, and deep down in her heart, Dad was never coming back home.
A coal mine is made of several interconnected tunnels. In an explosion scenario like the one that happened on this accident, it is expected that some fire will grow in magnitude and spread throughout the mine. On top of that, the structural integrity becomes compromised, which makes any rescue operation extremely difficult, from putting out the fire to retrieving the victims away from the site.
At that point, some hard decisions began to surface. Given the severity of the situation, rescuers had to face a moral dilemma. Should they continue risking their lives to search for miners, or should they call off the operation? In addition, Day 3 brought devastating news. The air quality samples that were taken inside the mine showed that the atmosphere could no longer sustain life due to the high levels of carbon dioxide and methane. The only section of the mine where air quality samples came back positive was the east wing, the one area that had not been hit by the explosions. Families remained in vigil at the church. The schools reopened, but some children didn't return. Some even refused to eat.
You know, but to kiss your father goodnight, hoping he'd come home. Oh, and that was something else too. You know, I always said I was Daddy's girl. I wouldn't even eat breakfast until my dad got home. I don't completely remember, but Kathy said that it was several weeks before I ever ate breakfast.
There was a cloud of sadness over Farmington. While some held out hope that the missing miners would be rescued alive, others began to accept it as part of the harsh reality of the profession. The truth for miners at mine number 9 was this. The mine was in its worst condition ever, and coal dust reached up to their knees. The lack of a proper ventilation system could be blamed on several factors, including, for example, poor maintenance. You can even have a ventilation system installed, but if corrective and preventive maintenance isn't done properly, that system will quickly deteriorate and fail to work effectively. Another factor was the absence of adequate regulations. Some companies operate without proper systems in place and ignoring key parameters for a safe ventilation. It can also be due to a lack of awareness. What's the actual risk, the danger or not of having a proper ventilation system? And of course, there's the issue of investment, the safe conditions needed for operation. These elements must be prioritized. Who's in charge of that? What are the most critical investments we need to make to ensure safety, well-being, and ultimately productivity inside the mine?
And I remember him the weekend before the explosion, talking and saying how the conditions in the mine had changed and deteriorated, and there wasn't enough rock dust, that they were working in coal dust knee deep, and that he was afraid that the mine was going to explode.
But if they would have just listened to the men, that it was bad down there and they couldn't hardly breathe, they couldn't hardly function. If they weren't so dead set on meeting quotas, you know, they had, Dad said they had quotas they had to meet. They had to go so far every night. If they weren't worrying about that and worried more about the safety, then I don't believe this would have ever happened.
On this day, crews began sealing some shafts and opening 2 new ones, closer to the area where miners might still be located. The company held a press briefing and spoke about the new drilling operations, but the slow progress frustrated many who asked, "You're not trying harder because you think no one's left alive, aren't you? You have to try. My brother is in there. We know he's alive. You guys need to make contact." The company simply replied, "There's a limit to what we can do."
The waiting was terrible. You think you've got it bad, but you look at another family that had I forget, I think it was 14 or 16 kids. How in the world, that woman, I mean, she had her way to heaven way before anybody even thought about it. To have that many kids.
And, in the evenings, I would end up going to the mines. And when I say going to the mines, it was actually a little company store that was located where the slope entry was to the mines. And everyone would gather there, and we would wait for briefings from mine workers, from Consol, from whoever had information that they were going to give. And we would wait in earnest for them to give information to us. None of the information that came out was ever good. It was always, bad news, it seemed like. Really wasn't much hope at that point in time.
And at that point in time, the company responsible for mine number 9 could no longer do anything to ensure the miners would be rescued alive. But there were, in fact, several measures that could have been taken earlier to prevent a disaster like this from happening. The accident in 1968 was not the company's first major tragedy. Over the years, many warning signs were ignored. And those miners, they knew they were working under extremely dangerous conditions.
In conditions of extreme cold outside the mine, when the ventilation system stops working, some warning signs become quite clear. We typically see rising temperatures inside the mine, people struggling to breathe because the air gets denser, and a rather noticeable increase in airborne dust.
When the miners saw the first power outage on the day of the accident, they didn't realize how serious it was, as blackouts were very common, and the safety devices were frequently shut off. There was too much gas, not enough air, too much coal dust, and very little rock dust. They fought tirelessly against the dust that coated the machines and equipment.
But what we found out, my husband didn't always tell me, and I know some of the others didn't either, but when there was a bad time going on in the mines, if the air was bad or if the fan was down and they were walking out, they didn't always tell you because they didn't want you to worry. But I found out after the fact that the fan in the mine had been down that night, and nobody warned them. And so the gas spilled up and it exploded.
It's important to point out that 4 months before the accident, one of the miners' compressants caught fire. Inspectors overlooked non-compliance issues and safety hazards. The miners asked for help from unions, supervisors, and even state mining officials. In 1967, 3 inspections were carried out, and they had already flagged the issue of accumulated coal dust. In 1968, before the explosion, inspections revealed the exact same situation. 19 days before the disaster, another inspection reported the same risks, including the threat of fire due to methane buildup.
Told us that they were going to blow the top of the mountain off because they're not rock dusting, they're not maintaining ventilation, the stoppings are back, and he was really worried.
The dust inside the mine was sometimes so thick that miners couldn't even see one another. When they raised concerns to their supervisors, they were often met with, "If things are happening the way you're telling me, then someone isn't doing their job." So the miners would ask themselves, what do our leaders actually believe their job is? They also filed reports with the safety committee, but almost nothing ever changed. Those miners were able to predict their own deaths before November 1968. Company President John Corcoran issued a statement that day promising the mine would not be sealed as long as there was any chance someone inside might still be alive. 2 inspections were conducted, but they brought little information and almost no hope to the miners' families. Some relatives refused to go back home and chose to sleep in the church instead. The lingering question was, why didn't the miners make it out? There are several reasons we can point to explain why it was so hard for miners to evacuate in the first moments after the explosion. The fire that spread very quickly, the lack of warnings and early alerts, and the thick, dark smoke that filled the space. There were also the narrow, maze-like tunnels, and of course, the panic, the despair brought on by the emergency. These are just some of the potential reasons why evacuating the mine proved so difficult for those miners. At the start of day 6, air sample results revealed that the mine's atmosphere could no longer sustain life. Near the area where those samples were taken, it was believed that 2 to 3 mining teams were located.
In a fire of such a scale as that, one that burns for several days, conditions for sustaining life start to become increasingly unfavorable. The fire itself consumes the oxygen in the mine's tunnels. It also produces large amounts of carbon monoxide, a gas that's toxic to humans, and extreme heat only adds to the danger, making survival even less likely in situations like this. Also, on top of all that, those explosions that continue over a long time naturally begin to damage the mine's structural integrity. In this case, collapses were even felt on the surface. That would have made the possibility of survivors extremely unlikely.
That day, they also used a high-precision microphone, capable of picking up a whisper from 100 feet away, but the only sound it captured was the water dripping. These triggered a wave of support efforts for the families.
They sent cards, they sent letters, I still have them, that people sent and wrote really nice things in. Some people sent money. There was a lot of money that was sent into the town of Farmington that we never saw. We're not sure exactly where that went. But, I mean, they sent... people sent food, they sent stuff for the kids, because it was close to Christmas time. And a lot of people just, they wrote a lot of cards and letters, everybody got them.
Rescue teams received many suggestions on how to reach the miners, but none of them were considered viable. One man claimed to have had a vision and knew exactly where the miners were. He asked to be put on a plane. Other miners from nearby sites refused to go into the mine that tragic day, saying it wasn't safe. They said they wouldn't go back until the mine was treated with rock dust. That day, the air quality samples confirmed that the air was poisonous, and there was no way anyone could survive in those conditions. The microphones and phones that were lowered into the shafts were not picking up any signals.
And a lot of the holes that they drilled and dropped the mics down, they melted. That's how hot the mines was.
Media coverage was constant. That same day in Washington, a press conference was held, sparking a strong reaction across the US and Canada. People said the law was terribly weak and protected only corporate interests. And the miners said they always knew exactly when the federal and state inspectors would be visiting the mines they worked in. Without a doubt, certain measures, if they had been implemented, could have prevented the accident. Starting with lessons learned from the past. Mine number 9 had a history of 3 major accidents that occurred before 1968. If the lessons from those events had been applied, we wouldn't be telling the story today. We should also talk about proper ventilation systems, gas monitoring, and truly managing hazards and risks so we can change, we can create a safe, workable condition underground. Leadership in safety, leaders who value active listening, who observe, who act, who create not only a safe workplace, but a place where people feel safe to speak up, a strong safety culture among everyone involved, every single person involved. Without a doubt, that alone could turn mine number 9 into a zero accident environment where people can go to work and come home whole, safe, and sound. At the end of day 7, another explosion occurred. And with every new blast, the people of Farmington lost a little more hope of finding their miners alive. Day 8 was the day before Thanksgiving. That day, the alarm sounded for 20 minutes, and microphones were once again lowered into the shafts. There was no response, just the sound of water dripping. The governor of West Virginia came to Farmington to show his support. That day, Thanksgiving baskets were handed out to the families. Some of them, they refused to accept the baskets. And one wife, she said, "Do you know what I want? I want to hear voices. I want God to give us a sign." Meanwhile, air quality samples from inside the mine continued to show the air was poisonous, incompatible with life. To answer that question, we need to go back to a previous accident that happened before the 1968 one, an accident that happened in 1954. After that event, it became clear that the miners were afraid to speak out the safety conditions they were exposed to. Also, miners were paid bonuses for productivity. And if you brought up anything about unsafe working conditions, if you filed a complaint, you'd be reassigned to a dirtier, more isolated, and more punishing job. All of these created a culture of fear of speaking up, fear of retaliation, and ultimately the fear of losing one's job. So it was very common to see shift reports marking the conditions as safe enough for miners to enter and work. Everything looked fine on paper. Records from 1967 show that out of 5,400 active coal mines in the country, 82% had issues with safety violations.
And I'm not sure the company cares about anything other than the money. You got to produce the coal. They'll push you to your limit to produce the coal so they can get their money. And of course, people have to live.
It's worth emphasizing the importance of protecting workers' rights and promoting a true culture of safety, where not only is it safe to do your job, but it's also safe to talk about the safety conditions that you're working under. And to be able to build these strong and mature safety culture, we need to establish these accessible channels where people can freely express their concerns and needs. Beyond that, we need to implement non-retaliation policies so that communication can be reliable, transparent, and really efficient in terms of promoting real change regarding the safety needs. And lastly, protect health, protect safety, and ensure well-being in the workplace. The Mine 9 disaster highlights the critical importance of implementing strong safety measures and emergency readiness in high-risk environments like the coal mines. It was Thanksgiving Day. while the rest of the country gathered around dinner tables with families to give thanks for their blessings. The families of more than 70 miners were living in absolute despair. At the company headquarters, they held a dinner, but most of the miners' families stayed home. Instead, a church service was held. Some people asked, "Why is God doing this?" On that terrible Thanksgiving morning, another explosion rocked Mine 9, and new samples confirmed that the air inside the mine was poisonous. Rumors began to spread that the company was going to seal the mine. 18 men, among them federal and state officials, company representatives, and union leaders, met to discuss the situation. It was the worst Thanksgiving in Farmington's history. Yes, it was possible to identify that at the time, the role of safety professionals was in development. There were already courses, some of them specifically focused on safety and mining, but they were less comprehensive. There was growing awareness about the importance of the subject. Some companies were even beginning to hire safety professionals in order to help them manage the risks. It was a time of transition. In short, this movement for hiring and developing had started, but there were still many opportunities for improvement. The air inside the mine was toxic, and even if the workers had survived the 20 major explosions and the many smaller ones that happened, they would have eventually run out of air. So, sadly, at that point, the only option left to actually manage the danger was to seal the mine.
And of course, the issue that you had at the time was, well, if they were still trying to get air into the mines for the miners, are you then fanning the flames from the explosions and creating, a worse situation that caused it to continue to boil up all those times? Normally if there's an explosion, from what I've heard, there's an explosion and that's basically it. This one continued to churn and burn and blow up.
Thus, on day number 10, families were called to the church. There, company president John Corcoran made a formal statement confirming what everyone feared. There was no way to reach the men. There was no chance that the men were alive. There was no other choice but to seal the mine. He said in his speech that this decision had been agreed upon by state and federal agencies, thereby sharing some of the accountability. There was a lot of weeping. Some asked him, "Do you think you're God?" Soon after, 90 trucks arrived, carrying 1,600 tons of rock. Those were dumped with 1,000 tons of limestone into the shafts where the first explosions had occurred, and into the hearts of every person in Farmington that day.
So that they finally had to seal it. And when they sealed it, it was all over them. There was no hope for anybody to come out, and they pulled the plug. And that was the end of it. I told my sisters and my mom, I said, "It's the deepest grave we'll ever see."
For many years, I blamed God for this, which is normal with us kids, and so, even though, we know it's not God's fault. Growing up is one of the hardest things anyone could ever do without a dad. We've missed out on so much when it comes to having your dad by your side. So much. A lot of women went on with their lives but yet there was a few that didn't, or several, I'm sure. But they went on with their lives. They found other spouses, got married, had more children and so forth. But there was no one for my mom, no one else other for my mom but my dad. And with that, it was a struggle. A lot of times we got what we needed, not what we wanted.
The pain spread across the coal mines. It was the death of hope. The day broke colder and grayer. In churches, pastors preached forgiveness. At the White House, demands were made for new laws. Some people in Farmington said there will be no Christmas, no holiday, not until the mine is opened again. That day marked the beginning of the investigation into the Mine No. 9 accident. 84 witnesses were summoned. However, only 47 appeared for the hearings, which lasted 3 days. Among them was the foreman, who handed off the shift but didn't sign or fill out the shift report before leaving the mine. It was discovered that inspections on preparedness and response systems were done on Sundays by just 2 mine employees over the course of 4 hours, something nearly impossible given that the mine spanned 8.5 square miles. This became evident throughout the investigation, interviews, and testimonials, because it was impossible to perform such inspections safely under those conditions. It was revealed during the investigation that the ventilation system had been damaged and compromised for years.
I don't know that they'll ever know for sure, but I do know that there were reports of the ventilation system having gone down and it being ignored, the miners having to walk out of the mines because the fan system, there was a device called the 𝗵𝗄 alarm system that was supposed to set off alarms in the bathhouse and maybe elsewhere to let people in authority know that the fan was down, that when the fan goes down, the ventilation is messed up in the mines. And as a consequence, it's not safe for the men to be in there working. And there was some evidence that was uncovered at some point in time that established that there had been a set of jumper cables used to bypass the 𝗵𝗄 alarm system so that the alarm was not sounding, and if the alarm was sounding after so long as I understand it, then the power would shut down in the mines, and that would cause the men to have to walk out.
And that's what happened. We know that's what happened, but we didn't learn this in time for our lawsuits to do any good. They told us the statute of limitations had run out. And so the guys were never really held responsible for it. We did have the opportunity, if you want to call it that, to see one of the electricians. He lived in Fairmont, and when we found out who it was, there were about 4 or 5 of us that went knocking on his door. And we asked him, please tell us who told you to do that? Why did you do that? Just trying to ask him questions. Of course, he was crazy because he didn't like the idea that everybody knew that. And he said, just don't worry about it. He said, it's all over with and done. He said, just don't worry about it. Just go on. And we're like, you're telling us to just forget him and just go on when you did this? You need to tell us. And he just was very adamant he wouldn't. You could tell he was very upset that somebody knew, but he never told.
The survivors of this tragedy, they refuse to call it an accident, since no preventive or control measures were taken before the disaster occurred.
But I do not feel it was an accident. I feel that it was all about the mighty dollar and not about the men, the workers. And I'll go to my grave believing that it was, I shouldn't say this, but to me it was just murder. They killed these 78 men because they wouldn't listen.
I don't believe that there's such a thing as an accident in the mines. It's self-made. If you stop, look, listen, and think, it won't happen. Everything is man-made. Everything is man-made. If stoppings are back, the ventilation ain't up. If you don't have enough mean air going around the miner.
Just to think, if he had had the proper gear, the proper ventilation, I could possibly have had my daddy. My family would have had our daddy. Wouldn't have had to struggle like we did.
Gary Martin, he was one of the guys in the bucket, the last ones to come out. I said, Gary, what do you actually think happened? And he looked at me and said, murder 178 times.
To this day, people still speculate about where the first explosion actually began on November 20th. Despite all the facts and the data that were uncovered during the investigation, none of them brought the miners back. But it certainly helped prevent disasters like this from happening again. The investigation was closed many, many years ago. What remains open is November 20th, 1968. That day remains open to every family member because when a worker goes to work and doesn't return home, that day never ends. It never truly ends.
So you need to know this, ladies, that if you have a man in there and something like this happens, it never ends. It never ends. So you have to back them. You have to tell them, come on, guys, let's try to straighten this up because we can't let them do this to us. Because your life will never be the same. And your kids will pay for it so that nobody forgets. Because if they forget, it'll happen again. So that's an important thing, that people remember that these kind of things happen to everyone and that they should be real careful with reporting things. If you see something's going wrong, report it. I mean, don't take that chance.
You relive that over and over and over again in your mind. And the thing was, you never had the closure that you would expect when someone in your family, passes away.
Like I said, it still hangs with you. There's no closure, okay? There's no closure.
Today, at the site of the explosion of the mine, there is a memorial. And that memorial is not just a place for paying respect. It stands there to remind all of us that life is non-negotiable, that jobs can always be replaced, but people never.
thee. How great thou art. How great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art. How great thou
If the families of the victims found any peace, it was in making mining safer for thousands of others. To tell this story is not just to tell something that ruined many lives. It's also to tell something that saved many lives. Since 1 year later, the U.S. Congress passed the landmark Federal Coal Mine Health and Safety Act. This tragedy revealed the deep challenges in safety culture. Challenges driven by production pressure and incentive pay based on output, lack of oversight and proper regulations, lack of real risk management inside the mine, and resources prioritized to other ends. And that place was more than an unsafe place to work. It was an unsafe place to speak up. Those miners were under constant threat, torn between survival and how will I provide for my family? Families claimed they could identify the risks, but they were afraid. And something that we must highlight here is that we can't wait for a tragedy to pinpoint the causes and contributing factors. It's easy to point fingers once the investigation is complete, but what we need today is empowerment for building a safety culture. A culture that shows up in every choice, every decision, every action, every habit. Starting with the leadership, leaders who set the example, leaders who influence, leaders who step in long before the accident happens. But the most important question is how to build a strong safety culture, an evolved culture, one that focuses on anticipation, one that focuses on preventing accidents. And to paraphrase Peter Drucker, we need to say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. A culture based on action, not theory, on practice, not theory. A culture that goes beyond how I wish things were and reflects how things actually are. A culture that aligns what I believe with what I refuse to compromise. These are the principles that evolve over time. They are responsible for pointing us towards levels of maturity, starting at the pathological level where there is denial of safety culture, then a reactive level where we respond only after the accidents, the incidents occur, then a calculative level where we all become the rule followers that follow checklists and procedures, then a proactive level, an independent level where we hold accountability, where we understand safety starts with us. That safety isn't just in the safety departments and the protocols. Safety begins with me. I become the owner of safety measures. I embody the safety measures. It stops being something that I see on a wall poster on my workplace and becomes part of who I am. And that culture continues to evolve to a sustainable level, which is best defined as a genuine passion for continuous improvement. We all want a strong safety culture. But before we can define the direction, we need to understand where we are. Understand what is your current maturity level. Face those challenges, and from there, ultimately develop a true path to safety excellency. And how does a safety culture reveals itself to us? More than just looking at numbers to define a strong culture of safety, what we really need is to look at those people coming back home every day, whole, safe, and sound. That is, without a doubt, the best definition of a strong safety culture. One that shows up before the task begins. It reaches the individual. It enables that person to engage in safety discussions, to bring safety into every activity he or she carries out, because the next job can't be the last one.
If you asked me, where is safety? I would tell you, it's in every arm, in every dream we pursue through our work. The mission of safety spans generations, and it becomes real when we make it home.
It is now my pleasure to introduce documentarian 𝗬𝗓𝗃 Araujo. She brings 25 years of experience in supply chain management and leading safety culture transformation in Fortune 500 companies. She holds degrees in civil engineering and occupational safety from the University of Campinas. 𝗬𝗓𝗃 then earned her master's degree in environmental diplomacy from the University of Geneva and specialized in sustainability at the IMD Business School, both in Switzerland. She's also a graduate of the Japanese management experience and studied personnel management and coaching at Ohio University. 𝗬𝗓𝗃 is the author of 16 titles, including the book Safety Culture, the first publication on the subject in Portuguese. She's trained more than 35,000 safety leaders in Brazil and internationally, as well as representing Brazil and the environmental, health, and safety sector at the United Nations headquarters and International Labor Organization. She is recognized as a safety leader by Belgium's Conference Board. She has been honored twice by PepsiCo for her achievements and has received more than 10 professional awards. Currently, she is dedicated to researching and making safety culture knowledgeable and more accessible. Please welcome 𝗬𝗓𝗃 Araujo.
Good evening, everyone. Being here today at Fairmont State University, so close to Farmington, means standing in a place of profound significance. This region holds in its story one of the most important lessons about the value of human life and the vital importance of workplace safety. I want to begin by deeply thanking to this university for hosting this event, and the community of Farmington for opening its doors, its hearts, and its memories so this story could be told. Farmington not only allowed me to do this work, it taught me that some stories must be told not to reopen wounds, but to ensure they never happen again. My special gratitude goes to 4 extraordinary individuals who had the courage to share their stories in this documentary: Joy Magnan, Sherry Cleland, Judy Kahn, and James Matish. You are the keeper of this memory. Each of you lost someone on the November morning, but you chose to turn your pain into purpose. You didn't just tell me what happened. You made me feel the weight of that waiting, the anguish of these 10 days, the emptiness that still me feel remains. But because of your courage in reliving those memories, A Day to Remember become more than a documentary. It became a living testimony of love, loss, and transformation. On November 20, 1968, just a few miles from here, 78 men went down into mine number 9 for their regular shift. They were fathers, sons, brothers, husbands. They were Emilio Magna on his last day underground before opening his gas station. They were Paul, one of the youngest miner, newly married. They were men who understood the risks, who sensed the danger, but who had families to provide for. What happened on that cold morning was not simply a tragedy. It was a turning point in the story of workplace safety. Because when those men didn't come home, their silenced voices became a cry that echoed through the halls of the U.S. Congress, resulting in the landmark Federal Coal Mine Health and Safety Act of 1969. As a safety engineer, I had studied hundreds of accidents, but Farmington taught me something no book ever could, that behind every statistic it is a child who waiting for a father who never come back. There is a wife who never celebrate Thanksgiving the same way again. There is an entire community carrying invisible scars. A day to remember is not just about the past. It is about the future we can build in when we learn from our tragedies. Every time a worker speaks up about an unsafe condition, every time a leader chooses life over output, every time we create an environment where it's safe to speak not just to worker, we honor the memory of these 78 men. The safety culture I stand for doesn't live in manuals or procedures. It lives in the daily choices of every worker who refuses to normalize risk. It lives in every leader who understands that people are not numbers, they are irreplaceable. It lives in every company that understands that true profit is everyone coming home safe and whole. Today, by sharing a day to remember with the world here at this university that shapes the professionals of tomorrow, we make a promise that these 78 lives were not lost in vain, that their stories will travel to every mine, every factory, every worker site where someone may be at risk. That somewhere a worker will watch in this documentary and find the courage to say no to unsafe situation. That a leader will think twice before putting production ahead of safety. The memorial in Farmington is not just a place of mourning. It's a beacon of transformation. It reminds us that the next job should never be the last, that every life is non-negotiable, that when a worker doesn't make it home, that day repeats itself forever for their family. This region turned its greatest tragedy into its greatest contribution to humanity. Because of the sacrifice of these men, thousands of workers come home every day. Because of the pain their families endured, other families have been spared. This documentary is my humble contribution to make sure we never forget. Because when we forget, history repeats itself. But when we remember, when we tell these stories, when we honor these men, we save lives. Thank you, Fairmont State University. Thank you, Joy Magnan, Cheryl Cleland, Jude Kern, and James Matishi. Thank you, Farmington. May the memory of the 7-8 miners continue to light the way towards a future where every work makes its home.
Thank you, Andressa, for your inspirational words. Now, please allow me to introduce tonight's panelists. First, a man known to many audience members, 𝗵𝗿𝗶𝗹𝗶, a third-generation coal miner and lifelong advocate for working people. Mike worked for more than 20 years as a coal miner and dedicated more than 22 years to the United Mine Workers of America. He served as a union organizer, compact coordinator for the Eastern United States, and finished his career as International District 31 Vice President. Mike rose through the ranks to become a respected union leader and a powerful voice for miners in the West Virginia legislature, where he served 24 years in the House of Delegates and 4 years as a state senator. Known for his compassion, integrity, and relentless fight for miners' rights, he leaves behind a legacy of leadership, loyalty, and love for the labor movement, second only to his love for his family. Our second panelist is 𝗤𝗵𝗵𝗹𝗶, a retired federal mine inspector with the Mine Safety and Health Administration. He is a graduate of Shinston High School, attended Fairmont State University, and is a graduate of the Mine Safety Academy in Beckley, West Virginia. Gary worked for 21 years as an underground coal miner. He also held several positions in the United Mine Workers of America. He then spent 10 years at Weyerhaeuser and participated on their international mine audit team before becoming a federal mine inspector in 2007. He concluded his career training coal miners in safety requirements for CONSOL Energy. Our third and final panelist is Reverend Dick Bowyer. He is a graduate of Marshall University who then earned both a Master's of Divinity and a Master's of Theology from Duke University. Reverend Bowyer served for 42 years as the campus minister for the Wesley Foundation here at Fairmont State University and was awarded a Doctor of Humane Letters by the university. Bowyer continues chairing the board of directors of the Mon Valley Health Association Centers and Valley Healthcare. He served as pastor of several United Methodist churches in West Virginia, including 10 years at Trinity United Methodist Church on Cleveland Avenue. He is a former trustee of Morristown Junior College and Knoxville College in Tennessee. Perhaps most relevant for tonight's conversation, Reverend Bowyer provided on-site pastoral care in 1968 during the immediate aftermath of the Farmington No. 9 mine disaster. Please welcome our panelists.
Thank you, gentlemen, to come here this night. And I think we have this moment to talk about more about this story. So I will start with you, Gary. So I would like to listen to you. I have one question for you. The Federal Coal Mine Health and Safety Act of 1969 was a direct response of the Farmington tragedy. What were the most important regulatory lessons incorporated into this legislation, and how did they transform the industry?
Well, let me say, prior to the disaster and the 1969 Coal Mine Health and Safety Act, it was not really enforcement, it was more like advice. After the 1969 Coal Mine Health and Safety Act, the mine inspectors acquired the ability to punish people who committed violations. Fines were issued. Miners were compensated for being in unsafe conditions. One more important things, there's something in 𝗵𝗁 called 105C. It's a discrimination citation that I could issue if a supervisor made you do something that was unsafe. And if you were punished for refusing to do something unsafe, then we could intervene and get your restitution.
Thank you. Thank you. So now moving, and I would like to talk with you, Mike Capuro. So I think we have some questions, just to put more ingredients in this discussion. The documentary showed the disaster impact on national public opinion. How did the media coverage of Farmington change American society's perception of mine safety and workers' rights?
Well, I certainly credit the media, quite frankly, for helping the cause of workplace safety, particularly for coal miners, because if you just research mine disasters, just in West Virginia, you will find many, many mine disasters in West Virginia. Farmington certainly wasn't the first mine disaster, and as far as fatalities, it wasn't the highest number of fatalities. The difference in Farmington was when a coal mine exploded, say down Everettsville in 1927 or in Fayette County in 1935, it rocked that community, and the community rallied around those families and tried to get them back on track. But the coal company just went to another location or reopened the mine and found some new miners and went on with life. The difference between Farmington No. 9 and all of those, the world seen for the first time, the world, not just the state, not just the country, but the world seen through satellite imagery, which was relatively new. We watched them, the smoke bellowing out of that shaft, and we watched those families in waiting and praying and waiting and hoping that their families would come out. But not only did the community see that, the world seen that. And that's what caused Congress to act. The pressure from that and the local families marching on Congress acted, and that's why we got the Coal Mine Health and Safety Act of 1969. One thing I want to point out, if you looked at that UMWA journal that was imposed up there, it said 199 miners were killed in 9 months. I don't know if the audience caught that. That was the headline of that journal. 199 miners killed in 9 months. The Coal Mine Health and Safety Act of 1969 saved tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of miners' lives. And the media showed the world what we had to go through. Coal companies didn't give us that. We fought like hell for it.
Okay, I believe. Reverend, in addition to improve media coverage, stronger legislation toward safety standards and better equipment, what other areas of our society have been influenced by the Farmington Mine No. 9 disaster?
I appreciate the closing of your documentary reminding us that we must not forget and the importance of telling the stories. Certainly the media has played a significant role, but the arts have been significant in keeping these concerns and issues alive. For example, there was a song done and presented several places and probably recorded by the Front Porch Country Band called No. 9 Mine. The Mannington disaster is on an album by Hazel Dickens. There's an article in a publication called The Widows of Farmington by Molly Call, which is magnificent, telling the story of those widows who organized, mobilized, went to D.C. and testified before Congress. There's a gentleman who used to work at Valley Healthcare as a mental health counselor who put together a song that I heard back in the 70s, and I spoke to him yesterday. It's a lot of words to the song, but it begins and ends with his reference to his Uncle Matt, who turned out to be a survivor but was in that mine. So Bonnie Stewart's, of course, profound work that gets into the investigation and so forth. And then here at Fairmont State University, just a few years ago, the drama department put together a play called Stories from Farmington No. 9. Now, interestingly, they had interviewed a number of survivors and families of those who had been the families of victims, but they've kind of focused that story around my 8 days and nights as a chaplain coordinator on site. But the arts have done a tremendous job in keeping this matter alive and not allowing us to forget.
Wow, incredible. So we have time, now we are timing monitoring. So I will start with you, my friend Gary, again. So when you talking about the decisions to seal the mine with the 78 miners still inside was extremely controversial. What lessons did this difficult decision bring to modern mine rescue protocols? And how has it changed the approach to similar situations?
Well, first let me say, if there's anybody in this audience that's on a mine rescue team, thank you. That's a tough job. It's a dangerous job. But mine rescue is like reactive. What we really want to be is proactive. So what happens by being proactive? We're talking about training, safety training. After the Mine Act in 1969, all mines were required to have rescue teams. The state of West Virginia has rescue teams. The United Mine Workers has rescue teams. These people train monthly. The equipment that they have is so much more advanced than what at Farmington. Seismographic data can be, being able to actually drill a hole to put a escape tube down inside to rescue maybe 1 or 2 miners at a time. I mean, the technology nowadays and the training and the enforcement of these regulations is really what, but we don't want to have to, we want all the mine rescue teams just to go to training. We don't want them to go to mines and get miners out of the mines. And I want to say one thing about the ventilation. You know, there's a law that says all miners or groups of miners together have to have a multi-gas detection device with them. So they can tell if there's no oxygen, carbon monoxide, or accumulations of methane, and it's an early warning system. And also there's, to assist mine rescue, all mines are required to have what they call a fresh air isolated intake escape way, where there's a tunnel that will lead you to the surface or to an escape shaft that's free of coal dust and methane gas and things like that. So mine rescue is just way ahead of the time than it was during Farmington.
I think when you look in the regulations and all these protocols, we are developing, but our development way is part of reactive learnings, right? Lessons learned. So when I training people, I say, exists a reason to every procedure that we need to follow. Exists a reason, exists an explanation about. No? So I think it's important to mention all the protocols that we create has a lot of people that lost your life there, you know, to this protocol exist today. So it's important that people understand why. Sometimes the people, they know what they need to do, but they don't understand why you need to do. It's something different. It's two things really different, why and what you need to do. And sometimes we just say, hey, it goes in this way. So not is just about giving the direction, it's about the reason of this direction. What is the reason? Sometimes we are training people in the rescue team and they say, oh, I don't want to be part of this team. So you understand the reason why to be part of this.
One more important thing, also the regulations now require miners, it's called a tracking system. So we know pretty much where every miner is underground in any coal mine in the state of West Virginia. And that certainly does help the mine rescue situation.
Yes, yes. Mike, the Farmington tragedy taught important lessons about the role of union in worker safety. How has the relationship between unions, companies, and regulatory agencies evolved since this historic event?
Well, of course, relations between the union and the company has always been hot and cold. I mean, we've been able to work with some companies that really want our input. want our safety committee inspections and want us to report hazardous conditions and get them fixed. Then, of course, on the other side of that coin, we've always had companies who still want to put profits first and think we can brush these little things to the side, and they get angry when we report them and demand that they be made fixed. But the Coal Mine Health and Safety Act of 1969 gave us the rights to travel with inspectors, to point out safety hazards, to remove yourself if you are placed in an unsafe condition, for the safety committee and the agencies to come and figure out who's right and who's wrong here. But our union has always had a great relationship with the regulatory agencies. You know, we went to battle with them. We show up at the conferences when the company tries to fight a violation. You know, just recently, a few years ago in the West Virginia legislature, there was an attack on the West Virginia agency. They wanted to take away their enforcement powers. And, you know, the union fought with the agencies to keep those enforcement powers in place. And then several years back, Gary, there was an attack on the federal agencies. A congressman or a senator from North Carolina, I believe, introduced a bill to do away with 𝗪cia. And, of course, the union lobbied on Capitol Hill because we know how important these agencies are. I mean, just because we have some good years in the industry and things seem to be going good, this always seems to surface. Let's do away with the state inspectors. Let's do away with the federal inspectors. No, they must remain in place, and the union safety committees and the leadership of the local union and our district here in District 31 under Vice President Payton has to remain strong and show the companies that we are not going to allow our members to work in unsafe mine conditions.
Yes. I think one word that you mentioned, dialogue. We need to provide dialogue. I think I like one sentence that we talk a lot in Brazil is safety starts with a good conversation. So safety starts in a good conversation. You need to provide this kind of conversation. I think we are in a university. The president opens this section, and he told about conversation, debate. So I think when we lost the dialogue, we lost everything. So provide this dialogue, discussion, debate is super important. I think we reinforce what is the value of safety.
Absolutely. In our contract, we have communication meeting language in there that we're supposed to meet periodically with my managers and union folks, and we can sit around the table and openly discuss without fear of any repercussion, if you have a union contract, without fear of any repercussion, to point out the things that they're doing right, the things that they're doing wrong, and the things we can all do better. And communication is the key, I believe, to workplace safety.
And try to find the right language, because now we have different stakeholders, so we need to find the right language to talk with each one. Right. Reverend, the impact of a disaster like Farmington goes beyond local borders. How did this accident influence safety practices in mines internationally, especially in countries with a strong mining tradition?
Well, the evidence is fairly clear that while there was major legislation in the United States, that did not seem to happen elsewhere around the world. But because, in part, of the media and the fact that so many people all over the world was aware of this tragedy, the heightened attitude towards safety began to rise. And other activities and actions then, I think, followed in other countries, such as your own experience. So while it did not lead to legislation around the world, it led to heightening the interest. And as the documentary indicates, it helped inspire World Safety Day.
Yes, and I would like to add, because Brazil is the 5th country with more mining producers. So I had my experience, my background in mining. Mm-hmm. So this accident influenced a lot in rescue teams and the ventilations and the regulation. The regulation inspired all the regulation. The regulation from Brazil started in 1978, so 9 years after the disaster here in Farmington. So we have understand and seen the influences of this story. Okay. Gary, I will return to you again. The last one. Farmington revealed major failures in the safety culture of the time. How have mining companies learned to develop a more robust safety culture where workers feel comfortable to reporting problems without fear of retaliation? How you see this psychological safety today?
You know, think about it, and what goes on in the industry now is a lot better health and safety training. New miners have to have 40 hours of training on the surface, 25 if they're working on underground, 25 if they're working on the surface. Then annually, all miners have to have 8-hour refresher, and the education and training on what to do and what not to do includes like first aid, roof control, dust control, anything that can harm you. So therefore, I really believe that the education and training and it's got to be a safety culture. I worked for a company once, it's called behavioral-based safety. If you learn to work safe, you will work safe. If you learn to be haphazard, you'll be haphazard. One thing that I always, in my mind, said, you're only as safe as the guy working beside of you. And also what, like Mike said, being able to say no, being able to say, I'm not doing that. I don't care if you like it or not, I'm not doing that. And that makes a lot of difference. And being able to say no and not be punished for it makes a major difference.
Yes, yes. And when you talk about safety culture, now what is culture? Culture is values and beliefs. So how we treat the right beliefs, because the beliefs transform into attitudes, in habits, in behavior. So we need to reinforce the right beliefs so we can avoid the accidents. You are the most important person to care about yourself. So how we need teaching these beliefs to create this safety culture. So I think it starts with training. I agree with you, start with training. Reverend, the documentary portrays the profound impact of the mine number 9 disaster in Farmington. As experts, could you describe the ripple effects that an accident of this magnitude causes, not only on the victims' families, but on the entire social and economic fabric of a mining community?
Well, of course, we've heard at least from some of the victims' families, and at the memorial yesterday, I was able to chat with one or two and realize that the impact of that continues to this very day. And even in my own situation, seeing some of the scenes and hearing some of the stories took me back to those times in a way that many other things don't accomplish. But it had a major impact economically and otherwise around here. You suddenly had all these men who were not working, and so there was a great economic impact on those families, and not only on those families, but the businesses where they purchased items and so forth. So there was a significant impact, not only immediately, but that lasted for a significant period of time, so that there's a ripple effect of sorts when these things happen, and particularly because this was so concentrated in a small community, I think it did burst forth in a way that may not have happened in so many other cases. But particularly the social, the economic impact. But concerns with mental health agencies and healthcare and so forth have been impacted with that. In order to be able to respond more helpfully and hopefully to not only those families and victims, but to others who are impacted in different ways.
Thank you. Mike, Science Farmington. How have early detection technologies and prevention systems for methane and other hazardous gases in underground mines evolved?
Technology for methane and other hazardous gas detection has evolved greatly over the years. I mean, if you go back to the early 1900s, they actually took a live canary in a wooden cage in the mines to see if the canary died, then you knew there was gas there, and you got out, to a flame safety lamp, which was used, you know, that you actually had to hold up to the face. And then eventually we had handheld detectors. We had detectors that was mounted on the equipment. We had detectors that was mounted throughout the mine that would send reports to the dispatcher if there were hazardous conditions or hazardous toxic gas in the air. Fire detection systems throughout the mine that would detect CO2 that could send an alarm outside to pre-warn people before something got so far out of hand you couldn't escape or you couldn't get it under control. So over the years, technology has advanced greatly in that aspect, and I think that helps save a lot of lives as well.
Okay. I would like to invite you, if you have a final message to share with us. Now I would like to open the mic to listen of you guys.
Well, I probably should have included this a little while ago. Not only lasting impact along safety lines and that sort of thing, but what we did as a chaplain coordinator and those who assisted me have impacted the way responses are now done, not only in mining situations, but to other disasters that occur. We did some things because it seemed the right thing to do at the time. Initially, the media was coming in and just quite frankly harassing the families. They were all gathered in a circle, and the television cameras, a microphone on a long boom, as soon as the tears started to drop, that thing would pop in that family's face and want to know, well, how are you going to deal with Christmas? You know, those kind of harsh and horrible kinds of. So my friend and I, who actually just created the title of chaplain coordinators, decided in the company store to bring the furniture there into a circle with only one entry place, so that if any of those media folks tried to harass, we could stop them from coming in to get to them. And those that had the long booms and stick them in somebody's face, Bucky and I would just simply walk over and get between the boom and the family. But subsequently, while the reports and so forth were happening to the media up at the company store, when we were able to relocate down to the James Fork Church, we were able to separate those families from any direct contact with the media, so they were not being harassed in any kind of way. And then we were able to require and to get the agreement that the first announcements of those readings of whatever the gas level and so forth was presented at all. They were brought down and told to the family members first before they were told to the media or elsewhere. And then we were able to bring in addition to the trailers that were bought there for the company and the federal and the union and so forth, to bring in a separate trailer and be able to not only have a little prayer chapel for those who wanted or needed that independently, but to provide a space for child care. And I was able to work with students here at Fairmont State to come out on their breaks and so forth and spend time. So whenever those news announcements were going to be and families would gather at the church, so they would not be pressed with little children, we had students there that were doing child care. Well, many of those kinds of things now are being implemented in disaster responses everywhere. So I feel very strongly that Farmington No. 9 has introduced some very positive things in the lives of people in the faces of disaster.
You, Mike?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want the folks here in the front row to know that those 78 men that were listed on that monument are heroes to many of us. We certainly would not have had a safe workplace and not been able to go home to our families at the end of the day if not for the ultimate sacrifice that was made by those 78 men. Life became better in the coal mine because of them. And I don't want you guys to ever think they died in vain. And I don't want you to ever think we're ever going to forget them. And I don't want you to ever think that we're ever going to let laws go backwards without a fight because of what they done. I think you said it best. If we don't remember the past, we will return to the past. And we got to remind our elected officials, there's a few of them in this room today, that we need health and safety standards to be first and foremost, not only in the coal mines, but in every workplace. We cannot allow coal companies to come in, try to reduce these standards. We cannot allow coal companies to come in and try to do away with enforcement agencies that we depend on every day to make sure that we go home with all our fingers and all our toes, and we get to hug our kids and our grandkids at the end of the day. So remind your elected officials how important it is, because they hold the keys. They hold the keys. It was that close to losing the enforcement powers in the West Virginia mine, the Office of Mine Health and Safety, just a few years ago. And as hard as we fought, unfortunately, a coal miner got killed about 3 days before they was going to run that bill. And they pulled that bill off the agenda. Unfortunately, it took another death to beat that bill back. So we got to remember who we put in office, and once they're there, we got to remind them how important it is. But you folks in the front row, we love you, and we'll always remember your families.
Gary.
Well, let me say, I was a freshman at Fairmont State College at the time it happened. My father was a state mine inspector, and he had to go to Farmington to work with rescue crews, and my mother was dying of cancer. I have a lot of ties with Farmington. One of the miners, his name was 𝗵𝗵𝗄𝗃 Hayes, was with my father in a mine explosion at Clinchfield Coal Company's No. 2 mine at 𝗏𝗏, West Virginia. 21 of their brothers died on that day. My father and Mr. Hayes survived. A few days later, Mr. Hayes, or months, came to my father and said, "Hey, I got us a job at Farmington No. 9. And my father said, "No, Simon, I'm going back to Clinchfield Coal Company's No. 2 mine. Mr. Hayes is still in the mine." 𝗬𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗏 and his mom and dad sat at my grandparents' table for every Christmas that I can remember. And us, all of us Italians said, "the fish of the 7 fishes." And that's, you know, I'm like Mike. I can't tell you, all you folks in that front row, how much I love you, how much I appreciate you. And the suffering that you've had, no one can know what that is unless you went through it yourself. So God bless all of you, and God bless all coal miners, and all miners, whether they're working coal or metal, non-metal, whatever kind. And that's all I really have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Andresa, Reverend Bayer, Mike, Gary. Our team has been collecting up questions from some of you in the audience. If you have not submitted your question yet, just hold it up, wave it, and somebody will come pick it up. I hope we have time for most of them. The first comes from Dr. Ken Hillsborough. He asked, the 1968 mine disaster led to the movement for mine safety, especially by the widows, which led to the 1969 mine safety laws. Please comment on the widows' activism.
Made reference to that a while ago in that the article that I referenced by Molly Call, I believe, was specifically about the widows. In fact, I think that's the title of it, the Widows of Farmington. They responded quickly and mobilized and organized to make several things happen. One, to be able to care for the kind of resources that may have been coming together, but with the help and the encouragement, of course, with the union and others, these women who probably had never gotten before, maybe never held a microphone in front of their face, perhaps never traveled beyond the border of West Virginia, suddenly showed up in Washington, D.C. and sat before panels of congressmen and senators. Yeah, many didn't drive a car, as Gary just pointed out. So the significance of the work of those widows is profound. And I'm glad that question was raised, because we've kind of lifted up other people, but the widows of those miners have made significant contributions to the actual enforcement and the creation of the Mine Health and Safety Act.
I'll just briefly say, if you have to choose between a fight of a miner or the fight of the miner's wife, take the fight of the miner every time, because those widows, from what I've studied and read, marched on Capitol Hill, was led by a little lady about yay tall named Sarah Kazanowski, and they were not going to take no for an answer, and they was there because they didn't want other families to suffer the tragedy that they've suffered.
The next question comes from Denise Sante-Wilson. What do the asterisks by the names mean?
I can answer that. That means those are the unrecovered miners that their body was never recovered. That is their permanent resting place.
Karen Morris Taylor asked, for many years, coal companies controlled which doctors coal miners could see after accidents. Doctors minimized the severity of injuries in the interest of the company. How can this be addressed?
Well, let me tell you that
clinic.
Yeah.
Of course, locally, the Monongahela Valley Association of Health Centers was originally created at the urgence of the United Mine Workers, and it was originally largely a mine workers clinic. And in fact, 3 months to the day before the explosion, a group of doctors and nurses and a few of us board members spent a full day in a complete tour of Farmington number 9. So not only here in Fairmont, but in other places around the state and in other states, there are healthcare facilities that have a background and history of relationship and concern primarily to coal miners. But in recent years, there has been a heightened interest and concern about mental health. And I think doctors and other providers are being trained and encouraged more than in the past to be sensitive to all of the mental health needs and the traumas that people experience and will carry forever in harsh ways unless they are dealt with helpfully and hopefully along the way.
Mary Wilson has a question for you, Andressa. Brazil also has mining. How would you compare the safety cultures in Brazil compared to the one in the United States?
So in Brazil, we have one accident every 48 minutes and one fatality in the work every 3 hours and 4 minutes. So this story is important for us because we have a lot of lessons learning to us. Our culture is in safety is reactive. We are growing up, okay? We had been working in the last 20 years in mining companies and develop and improve, but we have a big journey in terms of how we can improve safety culture and safety behaviors. So it's a big challenging for us because it starts with education, starts put in the center the human being. And sometimes in some cultures, we don't have the value of life So the life not come first. The profit come first. So we have a big challenge to teaching people to care about yourself, care about others, and they can be open to receive care. So our journey in Brazil is starting understand what safety is, because the people thinking that safety is procedures, safety is if it's rules, safety is a safety technician, a safety professional, and we try to put on the table, say, safety is you, safety is your decision, you are in charge, you need to be responsible, we need to have the courage to stop. Sometimes, you know, we don't have this courage because we don't understand the value of life. Some people understand what safety is when they are watching a video like this, a movie like this, and understand what safety is. But the idea and the mission is we need to understand safety. Safety starts with a safety behavior, not as a safety accident.
The next question is for you, Mike. What would you say to a young person in the mines or who wants to mine today?
Could you repeat that, please?
What would you say to a young person in the mines or wanting to mine today?
Well, certainly I can't be critical of that. It's an industry that I chose at a very young age, and thanks to the union, I had a safe place to work, and I got health care, and I was able to raise my family there. The advice I would give them is to, you know, always be vigilant, always be aware of what you're doing. And when I would do safety talks at the mine, when I would go from section to section and I'd see somebody maybe taking just a little shortcut or something, I would tell them, you got to think more about your family, maybe less about yourself, because, you know, sometimes when we're young, we think we're invincible and we can't get hurt. But, you know, at that age, you're usually raising young children, and always try to tell them to think of their kids, think of their parents, think of everybody they love around them, and that should give you a daggone good reason to make sure you get to go home safe at night. And if you keep that in mind, you'll have a good career. Join the union, number one, and make sure you're out of union mine so you can stand up for your safety rights and protect yourself and protect your coworkers.
We touched on this question earlier. Hopefully the panel can expand on it. So why did the Farmington disaster have or cause such a change in safety regulations when past disasters such as the Monongah in 1907 did not?
I think that's really easy. We talked about it, the media, showing the world what these families went through, instead of just showing the community of Farmington and the county of Marion, the world seen it.
Days. And I think the 10 days waiting, I think this created a big commotion.
Absolutely.
And along with what Mike says, the whole country and the world was made aware. Prior to that, like that 1964 disaster that I was talking about, it might have made the local news for a day. Plus, it didn't last 8, 9, 10 days. It happened one night. The next day it was over. Those 21 men were brought out of the mine in body bags, and it was good. They went back to work, and that was it. The Farmington thing stretched out long enough for people to take notice.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our panelists for their contributions tonight.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Before we conclude the evening, I would also like to thank those who made this event possible. Something this large, this significant, doesn't just happen. It's the result of a lot of people's hard work. First and foremost, our Brazilian friends, Andressa, Fabio, Johnny, and Bobby, for making this moving documentary and choosing to premiere the English version here in Marion County, West Virginia. Thank you. Please accept these small tokens of Fairmont State University's appreciation for all of your hard work and for coming and sharing this with us. Go right ahead, sir.
Should be on.
Hello? Okay. Let me tell you, we have made strides in mine in safety, but I can tell you we're under attack. We're under attack by the federal government. If you have a telephone, and I know everybody's got one probably in their pocket, you call your senators, you call your congressman, and you tell them you are not going to put up with taking away the regulations that save people's lives.
And on that note, let me thank our panelists, Mike, Gary, Reverend Bowyer, for sharing your thoughtful insights about the number 9 disaster with us this evening. Thank you. Trudy Lemley, who provided the original newspaper headlines, Joe Magna, who provided slides, and Bob Campione, who provided his extensive photo archive. Thank you for contributing to tonight, as well as the Frank and Jane Gabor West Virginia Folklife Center and the Northern Appalachian Coal Mining Heritage Association for their displays. Thank you all. Casey Ketterman, Austin Bosgraf, Ashton Loudon, all of the students, especially the ones who ran to get those extra 120 seats. Thank you, as well as Jesse Sharps, Keeley Stiles, and the amazing communication, marketing, and creative team who helped get the word out. Clearly, they were very effective. The unseen contributors tonight in the back of the room, Dusty Merrill, Jeff Miller, Josh Thomas, and Chris Ward, for your exceptional audio-video support, streaming this to Brazil, and except for me stepping in front of that with my microphone and making it screech, you did great. You've got to work on me. Thank you. Guy Ward and Chad Francis, thank you for your assistance in arranging the event. A special shout out to Tiffany Rochella, who organized tonight's event. And finally, thank you to all of you who braved this cold night to come to campus and attend this premiere. You're now invited to attend a reception hosted by Fairmont State University. Have a good and safe evening. Thank you.